Good evening, and thank you for joining in on this important presentation on the state of camping programs here in the Mayflower Council. My name is Hunter McCormick, and I serve as the Camping and Program Director for the Mayflower Council. Before we get started, I just want to highlight that the intent of this presentation is to share some very factual information about where our camping operations are to date and some of the history that has gotten us to this point since the formation of Mayflower Council in 2017. The agenda for the evening will be a current review of the camping programs that we have, taking a look at our historical summer camp attendance and camp operation financial performance. Then we're going to take a look at the 2023 attendance and financial projections to see where we're headed into this coming year. And then take a look at what is the future implication based on the information that we see and the information that's available. And then where do we go from here? Now we have some basic information. What do we do with it? And how do we move forward? And then at the end, and probably most importantly, there will be plenty of time for questions. And if we do not have the opportunity to answer your questions, please feel free to continue to share those questions. Your best method is going to be by posting in the YouTube channel, and they'll populate. And we'll answer as many as we can this evening. At the absolute latest, we'll have a hard stop at 7 o'clock. But otherwise, we'll answer as many as we can. And whatever ones we can't get to, we will make sure that we share some information in an FAQ in the days to come. So without further ado, we'll jump into the meat of the presentation. So most of our key stakeholder groups know that the Mayflower Council has 3 camp properties. The first is the Knobscot Scout Reservation. Here we offer year-round camping opportunities. We do not do any summer camp programs of our own at this time at Knobscot. Then we have Camp Resolute, where we offer Adventure Day Camp, our overnight adventure camp, the Resolute Summer Experience, Scouts BSA Resident Camp, currently our Specialty Week programs, and of course NYLT, CIT, and staff opportunities. And we have Camp Squanto, where we offer Scouts BSA Resident Camp, as well as NYLT, CIT, and staff opportunities. So that's a snapshot of what we currently offer in the Mayflower Council at our properties. So taking a look at our summer camp attendance, again, this is considering the years since the formation of the Mayflower Council. And it's important to remember that as we look at these statistics, 2020 and 2021, we have to keep in mind the impact that the COVID-19 pandemic had on everyday life, and especially how that impacted our camp operations. And we just want to make sure that we're reminded of that kind of impact on our numbers. So if we look at the year of the merger, 2017, we had 768 attendees at Adventure Day Camp and 59 at Adventure Overnight Camp. And we had 609 resident campers for our Scouts BSA program, all at Camp Resolute. We weren't at that time doing a Scouts BSA aged day camp program. And at Squanto, we had 1,307 campers. And if you take those numbers and you kind of roll forward from 2017 up through 2022, for the most part, a lot of our numbers, we see a relatively steady decline, especially once the pandemic hit. And obviously, again, 2020 and 2021, we understand what happened there. But in 2022, if you look, our numbers didn't bounce right back to pre-pandemic numbers. I don't think anybody expected they would right off the bat, but we missed the mark in several key areas that we had anticipated would have come back a little bit faster. But understanding the camper attendance is one thing. Understanding some of the statistics behind those numbers is another. So if you take a look, the second chart also highlights some information on what percentage of our total Cub Scouts and Scouts BSA members attended summer camp. So again, if you look at 2017, we had 827 total Cub Scouts attend a program of the Mayflower Council for Cub camping. And that represents 19.76% of total Cub Scouts in the council in camp. And then if you look at our total Scouts BSA attendance, we had 1,916 Scouts BSA participants in our programs. It represents 46.01% of the Scouts BSA population of the Mayflower Council at that time. And when we're looking at membership, we're looking at June of that particular year. So it's the membership that we had in that particular program as of June. And again, as we go through the years rolling up to 2022, we see a gradual, for the most part, decline across the board. And even this past year in 2022, a considerable decline, even from the one of the pandemic years, 2021, in our percent of Cub Scouts attending, and a bounce back, but not a complete bounce back of our Scouts BSA participants. So, but that's a snapshot of our attendance. Let's take a look at the financial impact of our camp operations and the years since the merger. So again, when we look at our camp operations, we consider all three of our properties because the council's camping operation budget is both our summer programs and our year-round facilities operations. And important to note here that our 2022 numbers reflect our actual income and expense. So our net numbers as of November 2022. Obviously, we're still closing the year out, so some of these numbers will continue to change. But if you look at 2017, we had a net camping operation surplus of $314,000. So it's pretty considerable. And that's specifically in our operating fund. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And then in 2018, that number dropped significantly by more than half to 140, almost 141,000 net surplus. Went up a little bit again in 2019. And then, of course, we hit our pandemic years. We lost just shy of $200,000 in our camping operations in 2020 during the height of the pandemic. And then in 2021, interestingly enough, we lost close to $210,000. 2022 looks much better. We are currently projected to run very close to a balanced budget. You can see that as of November, we were in the black by just under $35,000. So again, we have a month and change of expenses that are still coming through. But we should be very close to a net zero impact in our camp operations. But again, if you take a look, we are out of the pandemic and our numbers are climbing again, but we have not made as considerable a return to the council's budget from our camping operations as we historically had. And all those net negative numbers, those are all instances where the council is subsidizing our camping operation, and our camping operation is not providing important revenue to the council's bottom line. Instead, the council has to help fund the camp operations. So I mentioned earlier, these numbers show operating revenue and expenses only. So it's just what's in operations. And so when we're looking at and talking about things like we need to add a new roof to a building, we need to put in a new pavilion, we need to replace a heating system in one of the year-round buildings, major improvements to a dining hall. Those don't come out of operations. Those come out of the capital fund. And that amount of money that is spent out of capital to improve our camp properties tends to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $300,000 to $500,000 a year. It depends on many variables, and the wish list of the kinds of projects we would like to do in the camps to really have top-notch, state-of-the-art properties would be considerably more than that $300,000 to $500,000 a year. But those numbers that you can see in the totals column on the right-hand side don't include the additional expense of our capital expenditures. And these capital revenues tend to be donor-designated donations. We get a fair amount of money from the McGee Foundation every year, as well as various trusts and individual donors. And then, of course, the balance comes from an annual draw on our endowment interest. So a portion of the endowment interest the council receives every year is allocated to our capital expenditures at our properties. But again, the bottom line here that we can see is that the program operations we have on our properties don't cover all of the expenses that we incur. So in one way or another, the council is subsidizing our camp operations. And again, based on the capital and operating combined, they have since the merger. So we have a little understanding on the history of our properties. Let's take a look at our projections for 2023. So first with attendance, here are our attendance goals for 2023 for our programs and our camps. So at Adventure Day Camp, we are looking for 400 total campers. That's a fair amount more than we had. It's a little bit more than double, in fact, what we had in 2022, but considerably less. It's almost half of our historical high of almost 800 campers. For our Adventure Overnight Camp, or what would be traditionally called Cub Scouted Resident Camp, we're looking for 80. Again, you go back several years and you'll see camp attendance over 100 before the merger. And since the merger, this would be a higher number than we've had since Mayflower Council has been in existence. For our Scouts BSA resident camp at Resolute, we are looking for 400 total campers. And that's our troop camping, that's provisional, NYLT, CIT. It doesn't include staff, but it does include all other resident programs that we have on the property. And then we're also shooting for 100 Scouts BSA campers. Again, that would be more campers than we had in 2022 for our Scouts BSA Day Camp. So again, we're looking to grow those programs. And then our Squano Scouts BSA resident camp goal this summer is 1,100. And just like our Resolute numbers, those resident campers include traditional unit camping, provisionals, NYLT, and CIT programs. So how does that attendance impact our financials? Well, we have our 3 camp operations here. We are projecting just shy of an $18,000 net positive surplus from Knobscot over the course of the year. At Resolute, we are currently budgeting for a just over $132,000 net loss at that operation. And then Squano, again, a net surplus $34,856. And that yields, I should say, a total net operation for our camps of a loss of just shy of $80,000. And again, right, like I shared in the last screen, this is before you factor in the expenditures of the council's capital budget for our camps, which this year will be over $300,000. So again, when you look at all of our operations combined, and this is year-round and summer, we're looking at a net $80,000 loss if we hit some stretch goal numbers in some of our camp programs and really grow. We definitely have the potential to, but even under really good projections, we're still looking at a loss. So you have some history on where we are since the merger. You have some knowledge on what we're looking at for 2023. So what are some implications this data tells us and the trends that we've been experiencing since the formation of Mayflower Council for our camps? Overall, the trend in camp attendance has been an annual decline in total campers. Again, we've had some programs that have experienced gains here and there, small gains, but nothing sustained. The only sustaining trend has been a decline, and we haven't been able to gain, strong return of pre-pandemic numbers just yet. I definitely believe we're heading in the right direction, but we're not there yet. Another important factor to remember is that even if we hit important attendance projections, operating expenses continue to increase and they continue to be somewhat unpredictable. So not only are they going up, but they're fluctuating unpredictably. It's hard to nail some of those down. So key expense categories that are a considerable part of a camp operations budget and that have also been going up pretty considerably and are certainly much higher than they were at the formation of the council, include employment expenses. So we continue to hire summer camp staff at the same base pay rate that we did at the time of the merger. So in the last 5 years, we have not increased the starting salary for our summer camp staff, despite increases all around in expenses that they'd be experiencing. Our dining hall operations continue to increase in expense. That includes fuel there, heating. It includes, all the utilities to operate the dining halls. It includes the food. And since we outsource our contract for food service, it includes their employment personnel as well. So those tend to be very high as a percentage of our summer camp budget. Staff and dining hall operations account for well over 60% of the expenses that we have at camp. Building supplies. So as we continue to try to maintain the properties and we work to improve them, the raw materials that we need to undertake those projects have gone up considerably. Fuel for vehicles and equipment, vehicle maintenance, all those costs have continued to climb. They're starting to stabilize in some areas now, but again, we don't know how long they are, they're going to be stable. And we don't expect them to actually return to anywhere near pre-pandemic numbers for the most part. And the annual increase in camper fees, combined with the trend in decreased attendance, won't cover these increased expenses. So even as we continue to grow our attendance back to pre-pandemic numbers, following the trends that we're seeing, we still won't make up those cost differences. And decreasing camp attendance also creates a loss of quality for the overall camper experience. That's something we haven't talked about yet in this presentation, but it's an important consideration to keep in mind. Is there the same kind of energy or enthusiasm when you have a camp with 75 scouts in it or a camp that has 375 scouts in it? I think we all know that it's just not the same. So what kind of quality experience are we offering our campers if we can't fill our programs better? So really, what's the bottom line? When we look at the data, we look at the trends, and we look at these implications, what's the bottom line? The bottom line is that current attendance trends do not support camp operations the way we currently do them at Resolute and Squanto. So I think that's probably a piece of information a lot of people were expecting to hear at some point in time this evening. And I expect we'll probably get a lot of questions about those. So what does that mean? What is that? What's the result of that kind of statement? And the answer really is I can't answer that right now. The Mayflower Council doesn't anticipate selling camps, liquidating any property, spinning off any kind of assets. We're not in a position where that is a necessity, and we don't believe that's in the best interest of the families and the units we serve at this time. So no, I don't expect that to happen at any point in time in the future. Does that mean that running 2 summer camp operations may be unsustainable, that we need to evaluate how we provide summer camp experiences? Yes, I think it does. Does that mean that tomorrow we're going to make a decision about closing a camp operation? No, no. The reason that we're sharing this information tonight is to give you an understanding of kind of where we are at, and that any possible scenario for restructuring of our summer camp programs could be on the table, and we would be open to considering that. And again, you go back to the financial information, and it's because the council should not have to subsidize the camp operations. The camp should be helping to bring revenue in. At least it should cover its expenses. And our camping operations as a whole are not at that point. So where do we go from here? I think that's really the crux of this presentation, is sharing of the information and then providing a roadmap for all of our stakeholders to be involved in the solution. It's not just about highlighting problems, it's about how do we take the next steps? How can we help make our camp programs stronger? The bottom line is now is the time to take action, and everyone can help with that. So if your unit is already planning to attend Resolute or Squano in 2023, register now. We have about 27% of our units from last year that have registered for 2023. Only about 27%. And we know more than 27% of our units are planning to return. So why wait? Now is the time to register. So go to mayflowerbsa.camp, select your program, and register. So what if your unit isn't planning to attend Resolute or Squano in 2023? The first thing I would consider is reconsider. The council is prepared to reimburse deposits you may have paid at an out-of-council camp. So if you were looking to go to a different camp in the summer of 2023, whether you were at Resolute or Squano last year, or you haven't been to Resolute or Squano in 15 years, now is a great year to reconsider. And evaluate whether or not Squano or Resolute can be part of your summer program for your unit. And we're going to help make that a little more financially feasible so you're not out any expenses that you've paid. If that really is out of the question, or if you're looking to do even more, attend for a second week. We have units that attend Resolute or Squano and then do a second week out of council, or do their own unit activity as a second week. If you're already going to be doing something different, why not attend Squano or Resolute for a second week of camp? We can also promote other opportunities to all of your scouts. Counselor and training program opportunities, national youth leader training, specialty week opportunities, or just a provisional camp experience for scouts who may want to go to another week of camp, or 2 or 3 more weeks of camp. Those are all options that you have here in council, even if you're doing your primary week of camp outside. Sign up to be a camp promotion scheduler or presenter, and be sure your unit has signed up to receive a camp promotion. So you've seen in the Mayflower Today weekly newsletter article and link soliciting camp schedulers and camp promotion presenters. So we're trying to get to visit every Mayflower pack, troop, and crew to share the opportunities of our summer camp experience, in addition to our summer camp kickoff on January 14th. If you have a passion for our programs, if you are interested in helping our camps be successful, consider helping by calling other units to make sure they have a camp promotion scheduled, or consider serving as a presentation presenter so that you'd be somebody going out and giving a summer camp presentation. And make sure that your unit is signed up to receive a camp promotion. Again, even if your unit is already going to be going out of council for summer camp, there's no reason that we can't share some of the important opportunities that a scout could take advantage of in council in addition to that week of camp. And promote camp opportunities. Whenever you have an opportunity, share those when you're talking with unit leaders and fellow scouters and families. Doesn't matter if it's in your troop, in your community, with other units. And identify additional promotion opportunities. So the council is committed to doing promotions at more community-based events. We had a presence at a few Halloween-based activities earlier this year, and we are scheduled to be participating in some camp fairs very early in 2023. I know that we don't have that entire list of opportunities figured out across all the communities of our council. So if you're aware of an opportunity that we can take advantage of, let us know. Communicate that to us. We would very much like to get out into the community more and spread the message about the opportunities of our camps. So with that, I'm going to turn it over for questions. As a reminder from what I shared at the beginning of the presentation, feel free to post those questions on the social platform you're using to watch this presentation. I'm going to work through to answer as many questions as we have time to answer today, and look for an FAQ document that will highlight some follow-up questions for you. And then this presentation is also being recorded and will be available here on the council's YouTube page going forward. So feel free to share the link to this presentation to other people even after this evening. Our biggest goal in sharing this information with you tonight is to be sure that we can offer the best possible camping experience for all the youth Mayflower Council serves. Thank you for all that you do, and thank you for your support in making our programs the best that they can be.